alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Miles, host of the S.O.S. You know, we normally don't come on like this, but we have a very special Saturday spotlight. We are featuring the work, the celebration, and the talent and the legend of Dr. Sylvia Traymore Morrison, who's been so gracious as to come spend time with us. You know, a lot of times you guys see comedians and comediennes, you don't understand what we have a unicorn on the show today. She's a master impressionist and a comedian. And we're going to talk about what it is to have gone through those iterations of comedy from the 60s to 70s all the way up to now. Because you're not really going to get a full conversation of talent, understanding process, and the industry. So I thought we'd start out with a little clip. I know normally we start out with the opening. I'm still going to do that. But I want to show you just a little clip. This was taken from her 50th year in comedy. Okay, everybody? So I will see you here momentarily. Don't move.
Comedians, friends, and family gathered to celebrate 50 years of comedy with Sylvia Traymore Morrison.
I was watching a film on YouTube where Monique was talking to Ricky Smiley, and then she said, "We're comics of the 90s. But I was like, well, what happened to the 60s and the 70s and 80s? Because I was there. And I remembered talking to her on the phone one day, and she said, I told her I was getting tired. I was getting older, and I was getting tired. And she said, Miss Sylvia, don't get tired, because I'm that little girl. But because of you, I'm able to do what I do. And that was such a big deal for me.
Brothers and sisters, without further ado, I welcome to the stage comedy royalty. Not just comedy royalty, comedy consistency, comedy talent, comedy generosity, just comedy kindness. I'd like to say she's Dr. Sylvia Traymore Morrison, but I like to say she's my big sis in comedy. Let me welcome her to the show without further ado. Brothers and sisters, Dr. Sylvia Traymore Morrison. Assalamu alaikum. Oh, sorry about that. All right. Assalamu alaikum, sis. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed. I'm absolutely delighted to be here this evening.
There's so much to talk about. And I'm going to tell all the viewers right up front that the time we allotted is not enough time because you've seen so much iteration. I'm gonna spook your mind a little bit.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell everybody how long I've been around.
Okay.
2005 was 2005 Ramadan.
Okay.
I had a show with Allah Made Me Funny down in Orlando, Florida.
Okay.
And the woman who booked me, we got to talking about Red Fox.
Wow.
And she goes, wait a minute, a good friend of mine worked for Red Fox. I said, really? I said, yeah. The guy's name was Tony Major. And Tony Major was the VP of Red Fox Productions.
Wow.
And he goes, you're a DC guy? I said, yeah. He goes, we had all kinds of acts. I said, yeah. He goes, we had this woman named Sylvia Traymore Morrison.
Yeah.
And he goes, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, really? And he's, all these things he's telling me. I'm going, really? Because I'm from DC, but I didn't start out my career there. I was in school. But he's raving on and on about how he was signed and da-da-da, how ref. So I'm like, really, really, really? And there's no DNA at this point in time. Wow. I can't go. Now, people, I'm going to fast forward here a little bit. I'm at the funeral celebration homegoing for Dick Gregory. By chance, we wind up in the same row
Yeah.
with Dr. Sylvia. And it's like we have never seen each other before, but we knew of each other,
Right.
and her legend had grown in my mind and my spirit. And here we are at the homegoing of our shared mentor,
Yes.
Mr. Dick Gregory. And here we are. It's like it's so amazing that people don't know. And I'm gonna try and put people up on some game because I've been going through your books, of course. First and foremost, how's your health? How are you feeling? I know you had a bad case with COVID. You've written about it. How are you feeling, first and foremost?
I am so. I just don't even know how to say thank you enough to God because I thought I was out of here, but today I'm like 100%. I'm 100%.
We're glad to have you.
Thank
We're
you.
glad to have you.
Thank you.
Now, my thing that I think is really, really important is I'm going to try and explain a little bit
Okay.
about what makes you so special,
Okay.
but I'm going to be a good host and I'm going to shut up and get out of the way as soon as I can. Now, we have a thing that we do on the shout out show.
Okay.
Sister Sylvia, we have people who've been waiting for this show for a moment. And what we like to do in the old school way is we like to just tell them thank you for coming to the show. We call them the Shout Out Show family, the Shout Out Show soldiers. My mother was the first one on here, and she has come here and said, "Oh, you got a bunch of people. I can put the post down. Go ahead, Satana. Big welcome from my mother. We have Sister Ree. We call Sister Ree our craft services person. She makes sure your brother eats well and eats often. That's Sister Ree. Satana is our consultant producer of the show. You've been talking with her. Her husband Derek. Johnny L. Thomas, who's tuned in for the show. Sister Ika from Indonesia has tuned in from the show. And who else do we have? We got Brother Altaf Rashid all the way from Toronto. And guess what? Felicia Chappelle is on the show. You just pulling people from all over. Yes. And Felicia, for you guys don't know, Felicia and Dr. Sion, her mom, were there and we were just sitting all together, just hanging out. So
right.
I'm totally loving this. Sakina Mujahid from Charlotte. And what's going on, Felicia? She's saying hello, giving salams. So let's dig into this. Love you too. Now, let's get into this. I want people to understand that when you came up doing stand-up, so let me frame this carefully, very carefully.
Okay. I'm moving because I apologize. I'm moving
no
because
problem.
I need to go to a more private area. I have my grandkids here.
Okay.
So I'm moving to a nice private area where we can talk. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
And even the lighting may be better.
Okay, it's good. It's great. Oh, and Ayana Gregory is with Felicia. So
Oh my goodness.
you got all kind of stars.
Wow.
And Sean Robinson from DC, Mr. Noise Comedy, DC Connoisseur, he's on the show as well.
Wow.
He says it. There it is, the legendary Dr. Morrison. Okay.
Wow.
I was trying to figure out, and it hit me this morning, what it is that was so amazing about what you were doing. Okay, I think you're echoing a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, I hear you clear on the show, but it might be you're a little bit away from the internet.
You know what?
From the Wi-Fi.
Go back to where I was.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Really, it's okay. All right. Let me see. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Great. There we are. Am I still echoing?
They'll let you know if you are.
Okay.
Let me say this though. I figured out what it is that makes you so special and makes this show extremely special. As a comedian, you and I are probably out of the last group of comedians that looked at television as a pathway to stardom, success. We
Mm-hmm.
all aspired for Johnny Carson,
Absolutely. Yes.
Leno,
Mm-hmm.
Letterman. The group of comedians that came out around my age at the time, a little bit later, they had Def Jam.
Yeah.
They had cable.
Yes.
They had situations where it wasn't ABC, NBC, CBS. And so the
Comic.
drive to get there was so different. And there you are, Sylvia Traymore. One day you say, I want to be a comedian.
Yeah. Yeah.
The first time you pick up the microphone, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Give us your emotions. I'm gonna be quiet now.
If you got to still see me, but okay, there we are. I actually started in this business as a singer.
Mm.
I was in junior high school, and I belonged to a group. And I figured there were so many singers at the time, and I could do impressions. I could actually do impressions, and uh, I was doing. When I started doing impressions, there were very few black people that looked like me on the screen. So I basically did a lot of um, white people, like Jane Hathaway from the Beverly Hillbillies. I don't know if you guys. I'm really going way back. I'm going way back. Um, uh, Lily Tomlin. I was an airline stewardess at the time, but with respect to the first time I picked up the mic, I, like you said, television was our entry at that time. And I had to find a way to get on television. And while I had done countless house parties, birthday parties, weddings, all that other good stuff, as an impressionist, I found out that I should enter a pageant because that was national television. And my talent was strong, so I thought. And I couldn't enter the Miss America pageant because rule number 7 said in order to be a contestant, you had to be Caucasian.
Wow.
So
Whoa.
I was like, okay. So then I heard about the Miss Black America. I was watching Flip Wilson, the Flip Wilson show, and these gorgeous, young, black, afro-wearing, just amazing women came on stage and they performed and said what they had to do. They had to have a talent, they had to answer questions, and had to wear a bathing suit for the bathing suit competition. Now, mind you, at that time I weighed about 101 pounds, so I already knew that category was going to be tough. But I ended up entering the pageant, and I tied for first place with Bernadette Stannis, who is Selma from Good Times.
Wow. Wow.
And so it was so good. They sent me to Europe to entertain the American troops.
Wow. So you go to Europe.
Enter Red Fox.
And that's where you meet Red Fox.
I'm in Europe entertaining all of these military men and women. I was so fascinated. I was so in awe of the thousands of people in front of me, and they were all standing ovations and wonderful reports. We didn't have, as you know, as the internet and all of that other good stuff. We had Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 7, and Channel 9, ABC, NBC, Fox, and it wasn't even Fox at the time. But Red Fox had read about me in a magazine.
Okay, so he knew about you before.
Yes, he found out about me as a result of me being in the pageant. So he sent the people that work for him a note of what I'm saying. Bring her to LA when she comes home from Europe. So when they said Red Fox wanted to meet me, I was like, you mean the Red Fox? And no sooner than I got home from over in Europe, I had a ticket waiting for me at the airport to come to LA. That was
that is so amazing. Because at this point in time, a lot of people don't know. I think the only impressionists that are black that I can remember, George Kirby,
Yep.
Sammy Davis Jr.,
Oh, you got it.
and that's it. It was
Can
and
you
you.
name a Can you name a female for me? Do you know any of the female impressionists?
Ooh, that's a Jeopardy question. Start the music. That's a Jeopardy question. Start the music. And the reason why, Sylvia, is because there's another category: comedian, black, impressionist, clean. Here's the last one: good.
Wow.
And I'm like, that is my. That's the level that you're looking at. So you're gonna say if there's another one, there's not a man that's fitting at that point in time.
Yeah, it was. I was that I know of. I was the only black female impressionist in the history of this country. Period.
So people can research this a little bit. When you were watching comedians before you became one, who were you watching? Was there did you pay attention to the Jack Parr show or
Yeah, well, of course,
Carson?
there was Bill Cosby. There was Flip Wilson. There was Nipsey Russell. Of
Yes,
course,
I got
Flip
to meet
Wilson.
Nipsey Russell.
I think I said Flip Wilson. And Red Fox and Moms Mabley. Those are the ones I was watching.
This is what's really incredible is you hit a void. You hit a void because coming out of the '80s, everything turns into cable,
Yes.
and so it becomes so much more about distributing comedy rather than I want to say rather than developing comedy
Right.
or developing comedy content, if you will.
Right.
So I think that's the thing that I really want to touch on a little bit.
Okay.
So let me ask you just something to kind of get us going.
Okay.
How do you transition out of that era of TV? It goes from that era that we talked about to all of a sudden in the early '90s we have Def Jam,
Right.
and it's like what's that transition? Because a lot of comedians were caught in the middle.
Right.
Do you go this way? I had this conversation with John Witherspoon about do you go this way? Do you go that way? And we had really good conversations. Like and for a long time I was like, well, is it being a black comedian that was the problem, or was it the box we were being placed in? Because that box really didn't allow for black female comedians like yourself to, I want to say, have that space. You were totally different in that space because there were a lot of female comedians and I liked them, but you had to fall into a certain pattern, a certain template to be on Def Comedy Jam, or you were outside and you were still trying to go the Leno route. How did you survive that?
Well, you know what? I'm so glad you asked that because a lot of people have no clue of what it was like for a young black female comic / impressionist, and the racism and the hate and the horror of going through that period as a black female. I can't tell you the number of times I was told, why are you even here? Why do you even want to do comedy? Why, there's no room for you. No, you can't get on stage. We were doing a lot of open mics back then, a lot of open mics, and I could rarely get on a 3-minute free open mic. Because then keep in mind, I was doing comedy not only in the '80s, I was doing comedy in the '70s, and I think they told me no so much. And the crazy thing is, I believe, Preacher Moss, I believe God, I believe He protected me from having any feelings about the racism and the horror and the nose and all of that other stuff. Because I didn't care. I just said, okay, next. And I remember one night I had to leave California because my dad died. And, that's a whole nother story. It's in my book. But I went up to New York. I moved up to New York so I could be near my mother. And this guy named Jerry Seinfeld was hosting a place called Catch a Rising Star in New York City. And I remember I would go out every single night that God gave me. I was out on the streets, paving the sidewalks, trying to find clubs, trying to get in, trying to just get 3 minutes on stage, just three. That's all. Just like you give all the guys, let me have 3 minutes too. But no, nope, we don't have anything. We can't let you on. No, I'm sorry. We're already full. And I remember going to Catch a Rising Star, and Jerry Seinfeld, he was not, he was doing comedy as well. He was the host of Catch a Rising Star. And he looked at me, and I said, nobody has room for me. I just want to do 3 minutes like everybody else. And he said, you know what, Sylvia, you can do 3 minutes here. And Jerry was the first guy to let me come on his stage and perform. And I did so well that he told me I could come back anytime I wanted to. And that was so relieving for me. And then there was another guy, Rodney Dangerfield's club. I'm taking you back now. This is when Rodney Dangerfield first opened his club. And every Sunday night they had open mic. But I could never get on the stage. And finally, there's another a white guy. His name is David Copperfield, not the magician. This guy, he's in Europe now. I'm trying to connect with him now because he was the other person who, after I got on stage the one time, I was always allowed to go back and do another 3 minutes. So I have to, at that time, there were no Black open mic clubs at all. There were none. Zero. So it was, go ahead. Oh, I'm not hearing you.
I think you need to say that again. That there were no Black open mic clubs.
Not a one that I knew of. And I'm telling you, I traveled New York City with a fine-tooth comb for these, because I needed to be seen. I needed to get close enough to Johnny Carson, and like you said earlier in the show, so a talk show on TV. I needed to do that. And I knew if Joan Rivers was having the kind of problems she was having getting on a national screen, I already knew it was going to be tough, but I didn't care. I needed to move on and do what needed to be done so that I could get out there.
So I'm going to throw this out there because it's really, really something I don't want to overlook, Sylvia. The nuance that, in terms of comedy, if you will, you saying that there were no Black clubs really highlights that we didn't own our narrative back then.
No.
Like we didn't own our narrative, like an Uptown Comedy Club and things like that. Mm-hmm. Before Def Jam, we really did not own our narratives in the 70s, in the 80s. And the only people that did were your Red Foxes, your Richard Pryors, your megastars.
Yes.
And it really, and it was tough for me coming out in the mid 80s. So I can only imagine it's doubly tough because you're already in the industry and you're knocking on the door. You're knocking on the door for people like myself. So those no's you're taking from me and a ton of other comedians who don't understand that when you walk into a club, it's the same as Dick Gregory appearing on the Jack Parr show and say, I won't come if you don't let me sit on the sofa. Those type of stories are just not told. And I want my audience to know, this is what I mean when I say a pioneer. This is what I mean by saying a trailblazer, because that gets thrown around a lot. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea of people being pioneers and trailblazers, meaning that they're willing to take some lumps and some losses for people that come behind them.
Right.
Knowing that it may not come back to you.
Right.
You may not. Yeah. This is our business. So much is about people reinventing themselves. Sylvia Traymore has been the same person through and through. You have been blessed to see the industry remake itself around you, and it's exciting to watch. We opened up with a piece about your 50th anniversary. What is it? What does it mean to have these young comics come up to you who've done some research? Now you got internet and Wi-Fi, and they understand. Wait a minute, I'm missing here. They can't just walk past you and say what's up. You know, they have to pleasantly bow. They got to tip their hat to you.
And that's that's very rewarding for me. It really is, because I have so many young millennial comics coming on my Instagram, on my Facebook, saying, I heard, I didn't know you existed, and it was an honor to find out that you've been doing comedy for over 50 years. And what was, they all want to know what it was like in the beginning, and why I stayed, if I went through so much. They are just so eager. They want to hear. They want to know. They want to know what made you stay. How come you didn't leave? With all that was out there. Just, and it's very charming for me that they would come to me like they do nowadays. These young kids. Yeah.
I think the thing that so we're DC Comics. We come out of DC.
Right.
I remember my friend. I'm not dating myself, but you know what I'm about to say. We had one club in Washington D.C. that everybody wanted to work, the Comedy Cafe. Remember the Comedy Cafe?
Oh, do I remember the? I gotta tell you this right quick.
Wait, hold.
Okay.
You go like,
Right,
my first time going to the Comedy Cafe. My mother takes me. I tell her I want to be a comedian. She says okay. That night, Martin Lawrence gets on stage. Andy Evans stops the show to get the owner to come out of the back to watch Martin Lawrence, because he's been trying to get them to watch Martin Lawrence for weeks at this point in time. He's like, I don't know why they won't come out. Martin Lawrence wasn't getting time in DC at this point in time.
Well, yeah.
I think it was him, as Greg Poole,
Yeah.
Andy Evans,
Yes.
Sam Greenberg,
Sam
but
Ryan.
Fat Doctor.
Yes.
But they couldn't get anybody to watch Martin Lawrence. Nobody wanted to watch him.
Wow.
So when you talk about no's, those no's are deep and cutting. But let's talk about some yeses.
Well, go ahead. I do know this. When I went to the comedy cafe down on K Street in DC, those guys hadn't come up yet. They hadn't come up to the comedy cafe yet. The Fat Doctor, Greg Poole, that whole all of the, I did know Chris Thomas. I remember when Chris Thomas first started comedy. Tony Woods had not come on board yet onto the comedy scene, but I was there, and they would once in a while let me have 3 minutes on the stage. And I remember one night the owner, Dan, said to me, "You know what, Sylvia? We have Elaine Boozler coming to town. Why don't you come and open for her?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I know Elaine." I mean, I didn't know her personally, but I knew who she was. And I think you'll appreciate this. I really do. I went in, did my opening act, and Elaine Boozler loved the Dion work that I did. So it was time for me to get paid. I didn't even discuss payment back then. I worked my first 10 years in comedy and didn't get a dime, not a dollar. So this night, Dan was about to pay me. And I want to tell you what he paid me. I'm trying to set it up so you could get the same kind of shock treatment that I got. My payment for opening for Elaine Boozler, she had nothing to do with this. My payment that first night at the Comedy Cafe, I was so excited, was a Coca-Cola. A Coca-Cola.
That is worse than, I worked a club in Milwaukee called the Jazz Estate with Johnny Griffin, the Little Giant, played saxophone with Thelonious Monk.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know you're talking about.
I was so happy to get the gig. The owner paid me in cocaine.
Wow.
I don't do any, but here's the funny part. He actually put it out in lines, and he goes, "Oops, that's too much." He took a half a line.
Oh my God. Well, how about this? So wait a minute. He invited me back the second time to open for Rosie O'Donnell. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you what my pay was. It was a little better. It was, as a matter of fact, it was so much better. I got not only the Coca-Cola, but I got a $5 bill.
Oh, you didn't know what to do with yourself.
It was, I never been paid, so this was wait a minute, let me take that back. I got paid when I went to Europe to entertain the American troops. That was through the USO. But I'm talking about all the other days I had never, all the shows and open mics and comedy, never got it done.
Let me, you and I talked about this when we first met. That night at the Apollo. So Richard Pryor doesn't show up for a roast.
Right.
At a roast for Muhammad Ali. And you step in. I am so upset that they didn't have a YouTube back then.
Right.
I just know you killed this joint. It's like a magical night. It's like we can't find recording of it or maybe we can. But I mean, what is going through your mind that you are going to get up and you're going to do an imitation of the greatest?
Well,
I mean, I've seen the picture of him looking at you. But I mean, you roll up, you're fearless, and you know what's going to... Sometimes you tell a joke, and you know it's going to change the trajectory of things.
Yeah.
And when I see that picture of you on the dais, I'm like, she told a joke, and it changed her whole perspective. How people looked at you.
Yeah. It was, as you know, Richard Pryor was supposed to host it. And he called that day. He called Mr. Gregory, Dick Gregory, who I will always love until forever. Mr. Gregory is oh my God, the respect I have for him is...
Likewise.
Richard Pryor called that day and said he couldn't make it to the Apollo. And they didn't have anyone to host the show. I had planned to trash the show because my experience was nobody was going to let me on any stage. So in order for me to get on some of these big stages, I had to crash the show. So I'm going to crash Muhammad Ali's roast, where everybody and anybody, sports figures, politicians, I mean, you name it, celebrities, actors, they were all there. And Mr. Gregory was like, this is what I'm told, because I was in San Antonio when that happened. And he was like, I don't know what we're going to do. We don't have a host. So one of the girls I went to Europe with said, Mr. Gregory, you should bring on Sylvia Traymore Morrison. And he was like, who is that? You know how Mr. Gregory, who? What? She said, I promise you, she will handle the roast for you. So to make a very long story short, they flew me up from San Antonio the day of the roast to replace Richard Pryor. I'm a 20-some-year-old woman, never done a roast, never hosted anything like that. And they were having me to host the roast of Muhammad Ali. And I was so ecstatic. And I didn't know at the time it would change my life. Because that's the night that I did my impression of him. And to me, I had just learned to do it. So it wasn't actually perfected, but it was Muhammad Ali. And he came out on the stage because when they first brought him down for me to bring him out, introduce him. Preacher Moss, I looked at Muhammad Ali. He was to my left. I'll never forget it. And he had on this black suit, I think it was. It was a black suit with a white. And I'd never seen anybody that looked like him with respect to his size, to his notions, to his style. You know, he was just, I said, God himself made that man. I'd never seen a man that looked like him. And so I told him, I said, Mr. Ali, if you'll just give me a moment, I have a surprise for you. And I proceeded to do a poem that I wrote to replace his float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. And I did that poem, but I changed all the words. And when I was finished, the audience went bananas. He came out on the stage, grabbed my hand and took me to the front of the stage. And he said, you doing me, a woman doing me? That's awesome. And the place went bananas. And it was that night that Garrett Morris came and got me and said, you got to meet my boss, Lauren Michaels, Saturday Night Live. And 2 days later, I think it was 1 or 2 days later, he took me to NBC. I met Lauren Michaels, and he offered me a job as an associate writer on the spot.
Now this is pretty amazing because people, because this is where it gets hairy. You know, people would think that the trajectory just keeps going more higher, 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 higher. So you get on the show, you're writing on the show, but this is the real part about comedy. This is about something we're going to get into real quickly, just the ethic, because everything is not going to turn out the way you think it's going to turn out.
No, exactly.
You would think I'm going to have all these gigs, I'm going to da da da, and it can be over just like that.
Just like that.
Just literally
And-
like that.
I think when I think about how shortly after that, a year or two, however long it was, here I am. People knew that I had hosted. I'm the only female that's ever hosted a roast, ever. I don't care, Asian, Latino. Sylvia is the first and only female to ever host a major roast. So I'm tickled pink because you mentioned Andy Evans, who I love dearly. He was supposed to do a show to open for Whitney Houston in Washington, D.C. at the Warner Theater. He thought the show was on a Saturday night when in fact it was Friday. So the promoters called me and asked if I could come and open for Whitney Houston. And I'm like, yeah, hello. And so I run down to the Warner Theater and, again, to make a long story short, I opened for Whitney. And I'm not, I promise you, I'm not trying to brag. I really am not. I'm just telling you what happened. And it might sound like I'm bragging, but I promise you I'm not. I got 3 standing ovations. The Washington Post was there. They did this amazing write-up and said, Sylvia, when she goes, I was supposed to go on tour with Irene Carr and do Star Search and blah, blah, blah. Mike Joyce said Sylvia will receive the type of national exposure she deserves. So Whitney comes backstage where I am and she says, you know what? Want to go on tour? I'm gonna take you with me. I'm gonna take you. And so I was like, this is Whitney Houston. Telling me to go down the road. So I didn't pay it no mind because it was Whitney. I know Whitney would take me on the road. And a few months later, I get this call, and it's her. Can you be in New York tonight to open for me? I'm on tour. And I was like, yeah. That was like 2 o'clock. The show started in New York at 7. At 10 minutes to 7, I was walking in the door, ready to hit the stage. And she took me. I did 23 major United States cities with her, and it was absolutely amazing. And back to what you said about now, you're thinking you're going to do this, you're going to do that, but things can change in a minute. But what happened with Whitney Houston is the write-ups that I got across the country, and all 23 of those cities were so amazing. It was like, wow.
I'm gonna shock the audience. You do impressions. We've talked about this, but you have musicality in your impressions.
Yes.
You are a singer. You have a musician mind when you do them.
Yes.
I'm gonna throw one out.
Okay.
I would like to hear an impression of Wendy Williams talking about seeing you at a Whitney Houston concert.
Oh my God. Okay. How you doing? Okay, so get this, preacher. Get this. It's okay if I call you preacher. Should I say Moss with it? Okay, preacher Moss. I'll say it. I'll be respectful. I'll say it. So, okay. So I see this girl, and I'd never seen her before, and I'm like, oh my God. She's doing all these impressions, but she hasn't done me yet. Okay,
I only had one impression I could really do well back in the day.
Okay.
And it was so obscure. It was Miss Jane Pittman.
Oh my goodness. Wait a minute. Okay.
All right, no problem. I told him I was going to drink out of that water fountain. I didn't care if it was black or white. I was thirsty.
Oh, that is so good. That's so good. Oh my God.
But I used to do it for kids in school. They'd be like, "Who is Miss Jane Pisman?" I was like, "You already know who I am. I'm 200 years old."
That is funny. That's so good. That's good. That's good, Preacher Mom. That's a good one.
But let me
Yeah.
ask you this one. I want to flip. I want to flip the tempo a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Your book.
Yes.
You have several.
Yes.
Jelly Beans from Heaven is a very. For those who don't know, we're going to post the books as well. You can pick them up on Amazon, or you can go directly to Sylvia's website. Pennies from Heaven was a very spiritual book, and it tied in so close to me, Satan, God, and COVID-19. Like
Wow.
there's a balance there.
Wow. That's wow.
I love the concept of each jelly bean color representing sort of like a prayer for illness.
Yes.
And I'm like, you see me going back and forth. That's that musicality. That's you, Sylvia Traymore. But then you have a real life situation
Yeah.
with COVID, and I just want to know, sometimes things aren't funny, people. They're just
Yeah.
enlightening.
That's
And it's
right.
about faith
That's
and your
correct.
ethic and your faith. You come down with COVID. I remember I called you,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't get a hold of you. You know
Right,
how we
right.
call and check on one another.
Right.
And you texted me and said, "I can't talk right now." Huh? I can't talk right now. And you revealed that you at the height of fighting COVID
Yeah.
with pneumonia. So where are we with that? I think it's really important to, because we're in the space now with vaccinations and stuff like that. Because at this point in time, it could have gone left.
Yes.
We always say,
Absolutely.
God
Absolutely.
plans, man plans, God laughs.
Right.
We're happy to have you. But what's the perspective that you're giving us in me, Satan, God, and COVID-19? What messages are you telling us in that book?
I'm glad you asked that, Preacher Moss, because I was one of those people that I didn't want to take no vaccines. I don't be bringing me no vaccines. I don't want to hear about them. My parents didn't let us have vaccines. I'm against vaccines. That's where my position was prior to COVID-19 and pneumonia, because I had them both at the same time. And one of the reasons why I named the book Me, Satan, God, and COVID-19 is because all four of us, I believe, were in the room together. All four of us. And I was so sick. I was so sick. And people are shocked when I say this, because I am the most positive, God loving, believe, faith, hope, all of that. I got it. I am her. So when I got sick like I did, to a point where I was okay with death, I was okay. I was so sick. I would have welcomed it, to be honest. I'm just going to be honest. And I remember laying in the bed one night, and I run through this really, really quickly. And I was so sick. I called my oldest daughter and I said, "Listen, call my baby girl, her baby sister." And I said, "Let her know that if anything happens to me, I was okay. I just couldn't live like I was living. I couldn't go through it. I just couldn't go through no more. I couldn't take it." And I remember while I was laying, and I believe my mother's been dead since 1977. And I was a very young woman, very young girl rather, when she died. And I heard this voice saying, "Sylvia, what is wrong with you? Why are you talking this death stuff? Have you even thought about asking God to help you? Have you even given it a thought? You haven't even you got, excuse me, I'm sorry. You have everybody praying for you. You haven't prayed for yourself." And Preacher Moss, when that voice left, I believe it was my mother. I believe it was. And I immediately, and I just, it was so bad. I immediately prayed and I asked God to help me. I said, "God, please help me. I can't do this. And in that moment, and I'm not embarrassed to tell people, but I know they look at me side-eyed when I say this, but I believe strong. I'm a very strong believer. So in that moment, I heard a crack. I can't tell you what that crack was, but right before the crack, there was a big old black ball of slime in the middle of my bed. This is what I'm saying. I don't know if COVID had me hallucinating or what, but it had elbows and finger knocks and just stuff trying to get through. And I said, that's nothing but death. That's death. This is what I'm saying to myself in the bed. So when I asked God to help me and I heard this crack, in that moment, I mean, I couldn't even get up. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything. And I felt like this is it. And in that moment of that crack, something lifted off of me. I didn't get well, but something lifted. I can't tell you what it was. And I felt a little more hope. I could talk a little better. You know, I was like, Andy Evans was with me. I don't know how I got blessed to have that blessing, but I did. And in the next morning, I went to sleep, and the next morning when I woke up, I got up out the bed. I was still sick, but not like I was. And I went there and I told him, I said, it was a crack that I don't know what the crack was. And he said, you know what, Sylvia, that might have been God. Because I said, no, it wasn't a voice. He said, a lot of people think God comes in a voice. He's God. He can do what he wants to do. He can do whatever he wants to do. He said, when you told me you heard the crack and you had just prayed to him, to me, it sounds like he gave you some relief. So in saying all that, I was so sick that I'd rather take the vaccine and not ever have that to happen to me again. And I've been told, I can't tell you about countless people, no, don't take the vaccine. Don't take the vaccine. But if anybody knew what I went through, if anybody knew the horror that I had gone through with COVID, they would be okay with me taking the vaccine, because I can't do that again. Preacher Mother, I can't do it. I can't do it again. I can't do COVID again. So if it means that I mean, I did my numbers. I'm like, well, how many people died from COVID? How many people died from the vaccine? So I said, you know what? I'm high risk. I'm all of that. I cannot do COVID. I can't. So I left it. I prayed about it, and I asked God. I handed it to Him, and that's it. I'm doing fine. I'm doing well. And I'm so
that is such a powerful narrative for a person that does impressions. The voice you hear is your mother. So we're gonna pray for your mother too.
Thank
you. That is it's breathtaking.
Thank you.
There's really no way to kind of move off, because it's your story, it's your narrative. But I'm just totally engaged as whole that it's your mother's voice that you're hearing.
Yeah.
We have a court case getting ready to jump off right now with George Floyd, with Mr. Floyd, and what did he hear? His mother's voice.
Wow.
Ooh. Wow.
And when I got well from COVID, I couldn't thank God enough. I still can't. I don't know how I'm ever going to, be thankful enough. And I guess if I tell people, maybe somehow or another they'll protect themselves from getting it. More so than anything. I'm not trying to convince anybody to take the vaccine. I'm not trying to convince anybody not to take the vaccine. I'm just telling them what happened to me. And
I appreciate you being so honest and vulnerable. So now I have the big question, and I'm sorry, viewers. I tried to tell everybody that this whole thing was going to fly through. It flew through. And I apologize up front. Sylvia, I said an hour is not enough. You know, we're already 50 minutes into this.
What?
Musician? No. You're a musician. You knew it was going to happen. Don't you sit there and tell me no. Don't you sit there and tell me no. So Sylvia, what's next? I I asked you this question. I say what's next, but as my big sister, I want to reframe that and say, what are you working on?
Okay.
I want to give you
Well,
an artist respect. What are you working on?
I think God, I do believe God saved me because I have some very interesting projects coming up. I have a national TV show that I'll be appearing on real soon. I can't give all the details because the ink's not dry yet. I've been handed the script for the return of Jackie Mom's Mabley. It's a one-woman play. Yeah, and I'm going to be doing her. You know, a lot of people don't know that she was a singer and a dancer before she became a comedian. So she lived in D.C. Her house was across the street from mine. Now, mind you, she's much older than me, but the house that she owned, rather, was across the street from the first house I bought in D.C. So we were pretty much neighbors. But I never got a chance. I never met her because she died in 1975, and I didn't move there until the 80s. But so I'm doing the Return of Jackie Mom's Mabley, and I'm imitating in that because she wanted to earn more money as a chorus girl, a singer and a dancer. She went to audition at the Apollo, and she watched people like Billie Holiday, Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, who I love. I get to imitate all of them. You know, you'll come and see the play, and you'll hear Ella Fitzgerald and her scat queenliness. You know, all of that. So I get to do all of these ladies and stuff. And and I'm doing a historical comedy documentary, and I think Dave Chappelle's on it, along with Eddie Murphy and myself and Monique and Kim Whitley. It's a bunch of comics that are talking about it. So, yeah.
I think that's beautiful. You know,
Thank you.
I am I am so happy to have a platform to host you.
Thank
Because
you.
it's just so important, you know. And I felt when you told me about the COVID and things like that, you know I had anxiety. I was sending you texts
Yes, you were.
because you
Can
get
I say this?
yes, ma'am.
Whenever I get a text from you, it's always like the most special text of the day for me. Because I know how busy you are. I know you're involved in a lot. I know you deal with a lot. And I know you're, on the horizon. You're doing stuff. And you always make the text for me so, like, I feel it's spiritual. You always send a message, even if the message isn't evident, that the average person would receive it. I always receive such positiveness from your texts. So I want to thank you. I never got a chance to thank you for sending me all those text messages while I was sick, because I almost felt like God sent you to encourage me, to give me some hope and faith. And you did. You always did. So thank you for that. I sincerely appreciate it.
You know, Sylvia, I'm gonna say this. I'm only gonna say it once. Because you're family, more than an artist to me. And so everything we've talked about off camera and our conversations, I've never had a big sister in comedy. That's number one.
Wow.
And number two, rarely have had comedians who understood where I was coming from as an artist. And you, Mr. Gregory, and that's about it.
Wow.
That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a joy out of your joy. I could say I live vicariously through your joy.
Wow.
When I
So
see you places and doing things, I'm like, yeah, because they need to know. You know, I'm a big Dr. Sylvia Traymore Morrison cheerleader.
Wow.
You know, and
Thank
just so you people know, she rips it up wherever she goes. You know, I love when I have people that kind of, they somehow they doubt you. I said, go ahead and book her. I said, and here's a hint: you don't want anybody having to follow her, You are unfollowable. Whether it's Wendy Williams, whether it's Diana Ross. She did an event for Masjid Muhammad in D.C. a couple years ago. They called thanking me. And it was nice because I was like, you thought you knew something. I gave you something. You gave them the business. And not just on stage, but you let them. Here's all these years of stuff you have no idea about. You have such, I want to say you had such a reservoir of things that you can pull from. Like we're talking about George Kirby and Miss Jane Pittman. People don't know about that. Yeah. They say you got a card up. You might have a card up the sleeve. You got like 2 decks of cards.
Somebody was telling me the other day. They said, "There's so many people that would give their left arm to just have one of your major experiences that you've had." I mean, to host a roast for Muhammad Ali.
I got this one when I was there for the Ben Chili Bowl thing.
Yeah.
And I saw you and I ran backstage.
Yes, you did.
Can you do this one? I've only seen you do it once.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Can you do Melania Trump?
Now, I can, but let me tell you about Melania. Melania is a visual impression because I have had more people to send me notes saying I was through with Melania Trump. That was the most brilliant impression you do. And that's because I need the whole stage. I need the whole stage for Melania. And I mean, I can do a little of her voice now, but if it's okay with you, I'd rather sing her.
Okay.
Because it's such a special impression.
That's why you pull it off because there's not a lot of material to work with there. I think I only saw her speak like 4 times in 4 years. I think it was like thank you, hello. That was 2 times. But I just want to thank you because I'm going to wrap this show here in a little bit. I want to thank you. Is there any impression you would like to leave? An impression that you might like to leave for everybody? Because normally I'm bringing people in and we're talking, but this is different. I had to make sure we got in all the time for you. This show was about you.
Oh, thank you. Well, if Whoopi Goldberg was here, I think this is the message that she would leave. Okay, here's, ladies and gentlemen, Whoopi Goldberg. I have to get the tears out. They're trying to stay up in there. Let me just say this. Let me just say this to everyone, okay? Listen to this. There's been a lot going on in this country in the last year. And all I want to do is just take a break and go somewhere down to Jamaica or something. But I have to fight with people about Trump and McCain and all these political figures, and I'm okay with that. But Preacher Moss, I want to bring you on The View so you can talk about some of that stuff with me, okay? Thanks, folks. There you go.
I appreciate you. You are amazing.
Thank you.
We will talk soon.
Okay.
And we will break bread like we've been threatening to do for a little bit.
I know. Can you tell your mother hello for me, please?
She's Mary Moss. Dr. Traymore says hello. Dr. Sylvia says hello. She was the first one in the queue. She was in the first one in the queue, and I'm going to tell you something. My mom, I love her, but she bumbles anything with technology. And today she was the first one in the queue. Yay. She's giving you shout outs right now. I thought it was going to be, it was her. I was like, all the other shows I have, you don't come on to the end. We gotta send Geek Squad past the house to get it straight on the computer.
That's funny. Oh my God.
But for you, she was right on time. And I just want to say that throughout the years, I've been a big fan. And there's something to being a legend. It really has to do with not just your ethic, but just your generosity and your consistency as a human being. And people love you. And I understand why.
Thank you.
So on behalf of myself and my show and my producers and the Shout Out Show family, Shout Out Show soldiers, thank you so much for coming on the show. And we really, really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Love you, sis.
Okay. Take care.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. Well, family, listen, that was amazing. I want to thank Dr. Sylvia for coming on the show. Please don't get upset with me about the comments. I just wanted to make sure we actually got a chance because this lady, she gave us a whole hour plus, and I just want to be respectful of her time. Thank you, everybody, for coming in. Everybody in the comment section, I owe you one because I made this a big deal about coming. I hope you got your money's worth. If not, it's on me. It's something I did during the broadcast because she is amazing. And I want to give a special shout out to Sister Satana for working that back end for me. We got a whole lot of comments in here, brothers and sisters. Forgive me, but this time it was just about Dr. Sylvia and everything she was going through. And I hope it was inspiring. I hope you got something out of it. And like I said, if I didn't, it's a shortcoming on my side because she gave gems, a lot of inspiration. And if it's something you didn't get, that's from the host side. So forgive me for that. But you guys, thank you so much for coming on the show, making my guests feel incredibly welcome the way you guys make me feel every week. So I just want to say thank you. And, brothers and sisters, we'll be back tomorrow with the potluck. And I'll be back to my usual craziness and foolishness. But I appreciate you. Okay, everyone. Take care of yourself. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. This is Preacher Moss. I want to give a quick shout out again for our sponsor. I almost forgot. Well, you know how our sponsor is. BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. I didn't put up the trailer, but BeFinanciallyIndependent.com is our sponsor for the show, our Saturday Spotlight. You can go to www.BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Or you can call 1-800-679-3175 and talk to Attorney Cade and work out how you're going to get your financial freedom and prosperity. Okay, everybody, that's the show for today. Again, big shout out to Dr. Sylvia Traymore. We appreciate you. And as well, all of you guys for coming on the show. It means a lot. So I will see you tomorrow, inshallah. Take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your shout out show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next shout out show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Tarif Altar. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out TarifAltar.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.